Story 1. Arise. You need to. Abawa, and then silence descended. Those final utterances lingered, the tall, shadowy figure's voice fading as a white curtain veiled my vision, transforming the once familiar surroundings into an infinite expanse of snow. As my eyelids lifted sluggishly, they met the luminous gaze of the full moon casting its ethereal glow upon my pallid complexion. A chill crept over me as I lay upon the cold ground, my senses assaulted by the throbbing ache in my head and the sticky sensation of blood and mud on my hands. Panic surged through me as I struggled to piece together fragments of memory, bewildered by my presence in the depths of a forest. My heart raced like a frantic drumbeat, yet strangely, the frenzy subsided quickly. It struck me as ironic that amidst my amnesia, my inherent timidity remained a vivid recollection. The darkness enveloped me, a formidable presence in the solitude, particularly unsettling amidst the dense embrace of the forest. Each towering pine seemed to whisper secrets to the stars above. Alone in this eerie landscape, my instinct urged me to seek the nearest escape route from this unsettling realm. Yet, a curious calm settled over me, defying the expected terror. Despite the usual dread such isolation would evoke, an inexplicable sense of belonging washed over me, as if I had stumbled upon my intended destination. In the obscurity there was an odd comfort, a strange familiarity that defied logic. Trusting my instincts, I pressed forward with determination. After trekking for what felt like an eternity, an eerie silence blanketed the surroundings, a stark contrast to the expected cacophony of the wild. It was a testament to the mind's ability to deceive. Hours passed before a colossal mansion loomed into view, a beacon of potential salvation. With renewed hope, I hastened toward it, only to be confronted by a disconcerting illusion. Despite my desperate strides, the mansion seemed to recede, a mirage mocking my pursuit. Exhaustion gripped my weary limbs, causing me to collapse once more, the fleeting image of the mansion fading into oblivion. As consciousness returned, the sensation beneath me hinted at something other than the familiar ground. It was wood, sturdy and unyielding. Standing upon the mansion's wooden porch, confusion clouded my thoughts. How had I arrived here? Nothing seemed to align logically anymore. Intent on seeking answers, I approached the imposing Gothic door, only to be halted by the sight of my bruised hand, still stained with blood. An unwelcome sign of suspicion. Fortunately, the nearby lake offered a solution as I cleansed my hands in its icy embrace. Returning to the mansion, I cast a lingering gaze upon the moonlit lake. Its ethereal beauty was undeniable, shrouded in mist, with the moon's reflection dancing upon its tranquil surface. Yet, a profound silence hung heavy, lending an unsettling chill to the scene. Every detail, from the twisted shapes of the trees to the wintry backdrop, painted a haunting tableau. In that moment I felt akin to a lone wolf, adrift in a world foreign and forbidding, with only solitude as my companion. After contemplating in my transcendental state, I resolved to return to reality and headed back to the house. With each step, my heart resumed its heavy beating, its rhythm reverberating loudly in my ears. Here I stood before the door, consumed by curiosity as I surreptitiously listened. Silence enveloped me, broken only by the eerie wail of the wind, stirring an unsettling sensation within me. Tremors ran through me as I hesitated, raising my hand to knock, but before I could, the door creaked open of its own accord. It was as though the house beckoned me forth. "Hello? Is anyone here?" I uttered, my voice trembling as I crossed the threshold. Stepping into the dimly lit space, it became evident that the house had long been deserted. Judging by its grand windows and antiquated architecture, it seemed to hail from the 1920s. The longer I lingered, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. To my right loomed a cobweb-covered fireplace, while to my left, purple drapes allowed the moonlight to cast half the room in an eerie glow, leaving the other half shrouded in darkness. At the far end, a rusty metallic door beckoned, yet as I approached it, an unnerving sensation of being watched crept over me from the shadows. It took considerable effort to wrench open the creaking door, its chilling touch sending shivers down my spine. Inside the smaller room, a lone desk with a solitary drawer stood before me, and above it, a mirror hung on the wall. As I reached for the drawer, my gaze met my reflection. My God, I gasped inwardly. My face and neck bore numerous scratches, as though I had been viciously attacked. Horrified, I tore my gaze from the mirror and opened the drawer, revealing only a small black and white photograph. Straining to discern its details in the dim light, I beheld a family portrait. Clad in Victorian attire, each member wore an expression of subdued happiness. I studied them one by one, from the loving mother to the diligent father, the eldest son, and the da. With trembling hands, I hastily returned the photograph to the drawer. My entire body quivered violently as I stared at the image of the little girl, her expression eerily devoid of emotion. Overwhelmed by fear, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Without hesitation, I pivoted and shut the door behind me, seeking solace in the barrier it provided. Do you ever experience that sensation where fear grips you so tightly that you instinctively shut your eyes, yet your curiosity tugs at you, compelling you to open them again, despite knowing full well the regret that will inevitably follow? That's exactly how I felt. As I lifted the photograph for a closer inspection, I caught sight of the little girl in the mirror, standing directly behind me. Unlike before, her face wasn't vacant. Instead, it bore the most unsettling expression I had ever witnessed. With an elongated face that seemed to sway eerily from side to side, her jaw hung slack, and her eyes resembled two immense lumps of coal, devoid of any trace of mercy. Her scalp was concealed beneath a thick veil of greasy black hair, the longest I had ever beheld. Clad in a small, soiled nightgown, she revealed limbs of a pallid, bluish hue. My scream died in my throat as her foul odor assaulted my senses, causing me to gag. She locked her gaze onto mine through the mirror, paralyzing me with fear. Desperate to flee, I found my legs rooted to the spot. With grotesque stick-like limbs, she lurched forward, her scarred arms contorting against the wall. As her hair fell out in clumps and her decaying flesh oozed, any semblance of sanity within me vanished. I recalled the door on my right and surged towards it, fueled by adrenaline. This time, opening it posed no challenge. Inside, the room mirrored its predecessor, a solitary desk and a mirror. Peering into the reflective surface, I beheld the small girl huddled behind me. Unlike the ghostly tales of my youth, she charged at me with fury. My heart raced as I darted for the next door, finding another room identical to the last. Despite the eerie repetition, I couldn't dwell on it. Each glance into the mirror revealed the girl, inching closer with a menacing gaze. Her presence warped my thoughts, driving me to madness. In a frantic moment, I leaped out the window, fleeing her haunting reflection. Disappointment washed over me as I realized I was still breathing. Her presence was unbearable, yet there she stood, unmoving, her gaze filled with seething fury through the window. From afar, she resembled the figure in the photograph, pallid and eerie. I wished for nothing more than to surrender to oblivion, but then she leaped. The sickening thud as her body hit the ground echoed in my ears. Slowly she rose, resuming her menacing posture. Each step she took served as a grim reminder of the torment ahead. Was this a nightmare? It had to be such madness defied the boundaries of reality. Lost in contemplation of the unfolding events, I was abruptly brought back to reality as she approached. Her presence beside me, the sound of her breath, and the unmistakable scent of death that surrounded her served as stark reminders of her undeniable reality. I screamed until my throat ached, but she remained unfazed. Why hadn't she ended it already? What was she waiting for? Exhausted from my futile efforts, I fell silent and still. Life felt meaningless after enduring such horrors. My mind was forever scarred. I knew my time had come. Then, she lowered herself until her face was inches from mine. With a final breath, I closed my eyes, ready to embrace whatever awaited beyond. "It's all right, my son. We forgive you. Just come back to us." That voice. I know that voice. It's my father's. As I gradually opened my eyes, the blur cleared, revealing familiar faces: my devoted, industrious father and my stunning mother. Yet they were in tears, their eyes bloodshot from the torrents that had soaked my bedsheet. Where am I? This isn't my room. The machines beeping beside me clearly don't belong to me. Why is my arm restrained with handcuffs to the bed? Panic surged through me, and tears streamed down my face beneath the oxygen mask. It didn't take long for an explanation to emerge. Pop retrieved a newspaper from Mom's handbag, and the headline on the front page left me numb. Young girl killed in car accident. Hit and run tragedy. Drunken teenager crashes into tree. Knock. A dark figure eased open the door and slipped into the room. My still wet eyes struggled to make out his distorted features, but an eerie smile lingered on his face. I glanced at my parents, but they remained oblivious to his presence. Now standing on the opposite side of my bed, parallel to my parents, yet they showed no sign of acknowledgement. His featureless visage was unmistakably human, despite its unsettling distortion. The perpetual grin etched upon it sent shivers down my spine. Shifting his gaze from my parents to me, he began to whisper, his voice a slow, ominous murmur. "At last you're awake. Are you prepared?" He seized my arm, his grin stretching wider as he repeated, "Are you ready?" I shut my eyes. Story 2. "Welcome to Riverwood," the administrator greeted warmly, clasping the hand of the newest addition to the night nursing staff. Nestled in the heart of Millville, Riverwood stood as the sole nursing home in town, its origins tracing back to the early days when it served as a hospital. Its imposing presence, a 3-story structure forming an elegant L shape, was accentuated by a bell tower that now stood silent, its bell long removed. Perched atop a gentle rise overlooking the northern edge of town, Riverwood was ensconced in a dense thicket of trees, so dense that tales swirled of those who ventured too far and never returned. For years, Riverwood had been the refuge for the aged, the weary, the sick, and the hopeless, a place where many awaited their final moments. Stories whispered of darker times, of experiments gone awry within its walls, but those chapters had faded into the past. Through numerous renovations and technological updates, Riverwood had transformed into a modern haven, a sanctuary offering simple living and constant care to those in need. "Thank you, sir," the young nurse replied graciously, retracting her hand. "I aspire to have a long and fulfilling tenure here." The third shift, beginning this Friday, will be your assignment, stationed on the third floor West Hall, the administrator informed. Your companion for the night will be Emily, a young lady who will guide you through the premises upon your arrival. Once again, thank you, the nurse expressed her gratitude as they both stood up from their seats, and he escorted her to the door. Stepping outside, she gazed up at the imposing structure from the parking lot. "It's quite beautiful," she murmured to herself, though a faint shiver tingled down her spine. Despite its eerie aura, she was simply grateful for the employment opportunity. Times were tough, and with plans for a spring wedding, financial stability was paramount. Despite unsuccessful attempts at other nursing homes in neighboring towns, she found success here. Casting one final glance at the building, she climbed into her station wagon and drove down the driveway, anticipation bubbling within her to share the news with her fiancé. "Hello there," a voice greeted her as she ascended the final flight of stairs to the third floor. "You must be Nancy, the new night nurse," the voice continued, belonging to a young woman a few years her junior. "I'm Emily," she introduced herself. "I'm your assistant. I'm currently studying to become a nurse, so until I pass my exams, I can only offer assistance." Together, they strolled the remaining distance. Emily guided her through the layout of the third floor, pointing out the location of the restroom and the staff room. Given their third shift schedule, they would often dine at their desks, as they were the sole occupants of the entire West Hall during those hours. This particular corridor catered to the most severely ill patients, with each room designated as a sick bay. The pervasive odor emanating from the hall was potent enough to induce nausea in even the most resilient stomachs. Emily's responsibilities primarily revolved around maintaining cleanliness in the rooms and tending to the patient's basic needs such as hydration, bathing, and feeding. On the other hand, Nancy's role encompassed overseeing medication administration and handling any critical decision-making processes that arose. During her initial week on the job, Nancy encountered the unfortunate loss of 2 patients, while a third teetered on the brink of death. Collaborating with the nurse from the third floor North Hall, they managed to revive the woman in critical condition. Despite their efforts, the woman remained distraught, convinced that her time had come and fretting over imagined repercussions. Perplexed by the woman's beliefs, Nancy eventually administered a sedative to ensure she could find some much-needed rest. During a brief respite at the desk one night, the call lights outside empty patient rooms suddenly began illuminating, signaling a need for attention. Nancy and Emily investigated, only to find the switches untouched. It was at that moment that Emily decided to voice her thoughts. "If you find this strange, brace yourself. You're still getting used to things around here. The night shift is when this place truly comes alive." "What do you mean?" inquired Nancy. "Well, consider this," Emily began as they made their way back to the nurse's desk. "Working in a facility with the kind of history this one carries, where most arrivals don't depart alive, it's no surprise we encounter a few eerie occurrences. There's no shortage of them here." She paused, noticing Nancy's apprehension. "I'm sorry," she added quickly. "I don't mean to alarm you. You'll grow accustomed to it in time." They spent the remainder of the night engrossed in conversation, steadfastly staying by each other's side. Emily divulged the history of Riverwood to Nancy, which, despite occasionally unsettling her about her new position, reinforced her determination to persevere. She resolved to endure, understanding that a few spooky incidents wouldn't drive her to quit. Thus, night after night, she persisted. Despite the occasional odd occurrence, Nancy found herself gradually acclimating to her surroundings. However, it was that winter which posed a greater challenge for her. The snow accumulation in town was so dense that she couldn't fathom the severity of navigating to Riverwood. Nancy and her boyfriend resided a few miles from Millville, nestled in the quaint college town of Crestwood. While her workplace wasn't situated across the county, the heavy snowfall compelled her to opt for the highway route. Her car had skidded perilously close to the edge of the road on at least 3 occasions before she finally reached her destination. Upon arriving at work that night, she discovered that half of the already sparse night staff hadn't yet made it in. The radio was abuzz with reports about the weather, labeling it the most severe snowstorm in years. Some were even calling it a blizzard. Nancy couldn't disagree. The snow was nearly waist-deep already. She marveled at her ability to navigate through it in her station wagon, almost as if some unseen force had guided her there. "All right, here's the strategy," the charge nurse approached her during rounds. "Chances are we'll be stuck here for a bit, so make any necessary calls home before the phones go down. If the lights go out, the generator should kick in, giving us enough time to gather in the staff room. I'll provide further instructions if that happens. And don't forget to locate the flashlights for your hallway." As the nurse began to walk away, Nancy halted her. "What about Emily? Has she arrived yet?" "No, you'll have to manage on your own for now. I'll do my best to find someone to assist you as soon as possible. If you require immediate help, just page me with that." She vanished through the doors. Nancy surveyed the nurse's station, mentally tallying the tasks ahead as she prepared to juggle dual roles. Securing flashlights, she placed one on her cart and ventured into the dimly lit corridor. The pill pass had gone smoothly, save for intermittent flickers. Peering outside, she glimpsed a whiteout obscuring the view beyond the window panes. As she retraced her steps, lights faltered, then failed with a buzzing hum. Pausing, she anticipated the generator's activation, but silence persisted. Slowly advancing, she sensed a presence, unsettling in the darkness of the hallway. It could be the patients, she pondered. Perhaps they're curious about what's going on. "Return to your room," she instructed. "The storm has caused a power outage, but the generator will restore electricity soon." Despite her reassurances, doubt lingered. The generator should have already restored the lights. The person she had spoken to in the hallway must have heard her, as their presence faded away. Amidst the storm's cacophony outside, she strained to discern a distant tolling bell. Quickening her pace, she searched for her cart, illuminated by the flashlight. "I offered them your presence," a chilling voice echoed down the corridor. She halted, scanning the darkness around her. No one was visible, no presence felt. "Return to your room," she urged, her voice trembling slightly. "The lights will soon illuminate the darkness. You snatched me away from them, but they're seeking retribution now," the voice declared. Nancy recognized it as belonging to the old lady they had revived. "Please, lie down and rest," she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes, as she made her way along the wall towards the nurse's station. Each open doorway made her heart race. Then, the tolling of a bell echoed once more. A chilling draft brushed against her face like icy fingers. She longed for Emily's presence, a comfort in the darkness. Passing another open doorway, she was suddenly seized and pulled into the abyss. Her scream was stifled by the consuming darkness. Moments later, the generator roared to life, bathing the surroundings in light once more. Once the storm subsided and snowplows cleared the icy roads, a disconcerting noise caught the attention of the other nurses, the phantom tolling of a bell that no longer existed. Concerned, several nurses ventured to the bell tower, only to discover Nancy suspended by a rope. As the wind swayed her lifeless form, her head struck the bell, its eerie resonance echoing through the hills. Amidst the chilling air, they swore they heard a sinister, high-pitched laugh, like icy fingers gripping their souls.